Hello, my name is Mike Karasman. I just finished an SOS podcast with Jocelyn King. And, she asked me questions, but if you really think about it, it was how she asked the questions that she got information from. And she really knows what she's doing. And I was grateful to be on her show. However, I'm going to say something, give a plug to me. Next week, a book called Quietly Spectacular will be launched on Amazon. And it's about rethinking success and what that means to you and leading a more fulfilled life. It's not a Pollyanna story. It gets down to being who is the authentic you and how do you take that authenticity and live your life the way it could be lived. So again, thank you. And I look forward to autographing your books.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Smarter Online Safety Podcast. I'm your host, Jocelyn King, and I'm so thrilled today to welcome a true pioneer in the world of digital commerce, Mike Karasman. Mike's visionary leadership, he transformed CardinalCommerce from a humble startup into the global leader in payment authentication and alternative payment solutions. And they forged groundbreaking partnerships with industry giants like Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal, while expanding across Europe, Africa, the Americas, Asia, Australia. I think you hit every continent. I'm not sure if Antarctica's in there yet.
No, we never got there.
Okay, well, there you go. The penguins need security too. There you go. And as CEO, Mike steered the company through multiple funding rounds, culminating in its acquisition by Visa in 2017. But he and his team have been awarded over 70 patents worldwide. And as somebody who's worked in high tech in Silicon Valley for 20 years, that is a great record, let me say. And he has more than 100 still pending, really solidifying their role as innovators in secure online transactions. And before CardinalCommerce, Mike played pivotal roles in scaling two other major organizations where he helped turn companies into billion-dollar enterprises. And it is just so great to have you here. So get ready for an inspiring conversation as we dive into his journey and the lessons he's learned along the way and the advice he has for us on how to stay safe online. So welcome, Mike.
Well, Jocelyn, thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be interviewed by a professional such as you, quite polished. So I'm putting your hands, ask away.
Okay, well, great. So, I'm fascinated by this. I would love to know your take on this. You've witnessed the evolution of online commerce from its early days to today's AI-powered, ecosystem. And, when you started, there were consumer safety concerns that felt as big then as what we're dealing with now. But you've also seen them evolve. So could you just say a little bit about how you've seen that evolution take place?
So in a simplest sense, there was no protection in the beginning.
Mm,
And, people were looking for eyeballs and, look at how much I could sell. And it actually didn't important. The valuations were so high. It actually wasn't important. There was fraud. That fraud actually counted in the sales figures.
mm,
And so in the early days, there was zero concern. And then as e-commerce, mobile commerce started to grow, people said we need to do something. So the first phase was something called fraud screening.
okay.
And there were some very simple measures, but the crooks don't quit. I mean, they don't quit. Oh, geez, that's hard. We're gonna go back to farming. So they worked the system, and then fraud screening became so complex that one of the banks really started to take things in an extraordinarily serious way, and probably one of the prime reasons led to the acquisition of Visa, is
Mhm.
that it's good to get rid of the bad guys, but what you don't want to do is get rid of the good guys.
Well said. Yes.
So, you have a good customer, they reach for the credit card, they buy something, it happens to trigger some fraud screening metric,
Mhm.
and they say, okay, Jocelyn, we're denying you.
Mhm.
So what you would do, typically what you do is you would set that credit card aside and you go to another credit card. And if that credit card was good, that not only did become your primary card online, but it displaced your other card, your favorite card. So all of a sudden maybe a 20, 30-year banking relationship was gone because of the fraud screening was too rigid and not sensitive enough. Where we made our mark and what set us apart from anybody else, we didn't do this metric-based fraud screening. We actually worked to validate the identity of the cardholder. So, and we did this we had a cloud. Back then we called it an ASP in the early days, but cloud. And what we would do is if you think about when you go to a merchant, you enter data in there. Your name, your address, your zip code, all that kind of good stuff. Well, the bank happens to have that same information, but they had no way online to compare data. And think about
That is so interesting when you think about that. Yeah.
well, it is, but when you look at the numbers, you have billions of consumers, millions of merchants, and tens of thousands of issuing banks. So there was no way to have all of that compared. What we were able to do is, in a seamless way, is glean that information from what you put in the merchant site and be able to and know what the bank is doing and compare that information so that the bank can give them an affirmation of, yes, this is indeed Jocelyn. Not only with that, the bank would guarantee the transaction.
That makes sense.
So
Yes.
that was the real, and this ASP was, in fact, we got the first business method patent in the world in Europe because we used what we call a thin client.
Okay.
And
yeah.
so nobody thought you could get a business method patent in Europe because it wasn't technical enough. Ours happened to be. So we got a patent there. But it's the idea that you could positively identify somebody where the bank and the merchant and the consumer were in agreement that this was really a good transaction that set us apart.
Well, and that's so important because we've all experienced false positives.
Yep.
People in the Midwest, run into this all the time with you get an alert about weather, a tornado warning. And if you get too many of them and nothing happens, you become, it just becomes noise and you don't pay attention to it anymore. So if there's too many false positives on of your actual credit card company identifying you doing a real transaction, the consumer gets frustrated. And then, and I was just doing a workshop in Nashville this past week, and one of the things that came up, I asked for a show of hands, how many people feel it's more difficult for you to remember for you to log into your account and remember your password and everything than it seems for hackers to break into your account? There was a unanimous show of hands because it just feels like a lot of protections feel like obstacles to consumers. And so what you were really doing was solving that so that the credit card companies limited their risk without alienating their customers.
The technical term was shopping cart friction.
Oh, I like that term. That's
Yeah, I
great.
mean, so if there's too much friction,
Mhm.
you abandon the sale and you went to someplace else or you change cards.
Right.
And so you think about a merchant, Jocelyn's been buying at my store for umpteen years and she spends a lot of money. And all of a sudden we're saying no. So it's very important to keep the bad guys at bay.
Right.
But part of the real key is making sure the good guys can buy and pay for things.
That's perfect.
Frictionless way or with as minimal friction as possible.
So that's a really interesting. What do you think are the biggest what is the biggest misconception you think consumers have about online payment security today? Thinking that things exist that don't exist or just not understanding it. What do you think might be the biggest misconception they have about online payment?
I think you hit it on the head. Why do I have to put this in again? Why do I have to put this in again? I just, I have a doctor appointment. They always want to do that pre-screening information.
Right.
And they know my name.
Mhm.
All right. One consumer said, why I put my phone number in and they call that phone number. Why do they have to call that phone number? because you can actually spoof where a phone's coming from.
Mhm.
So a lot of these things as a consumer, you don't know. And it's very easy, and it's actually happened to me where I got called by some out-of-state police department
Mhm.
with some kind of speeding ticket or something, and I hadn't been there, but the number that showed up looked like that state's police department.
Right. Even though it's from who knows where.
God knows where, yeah, Timbuktu or thereabouts.
Right.
So, the consumer doesn't know all what's happened, and if something in particular happens with a merchant, they double down on the security on that aspect.
Right. Right. No, that's
And you also, in that whole metric, when I said billions of consumers, millions of merchants, and tens of thousands of issuing banks, the permutations and combinations get wickedly complex because you just don't buy from one thing.
right.
Okay, we've got Jocelyn's URL because she buys everything from her PC. Well, not anymore. She's got a laptop while she's sitting in the airport. She buys from a mobile phone. So now that billions of consumers has a factor about it that it's 4 or 5 or 6 because there's just different kind of devices.
Right. And different locations and IP
Yeah,
addresses.
yeah.
Okay. No, that's really interesting. And then seeing all these changes that you've witnessed now, I'm so glad to see you here in one piece, that your head hasn't exploded from everything that's happening with AI powered fraud and things coming in. But as you're watching what's happening with AI powered fraud schemes and hacks, and not only so the sophistication that AI is giving to cyber criminals, and then also just the sheer volume because of the automation of everything. I would just love to get your take on what you're witnessing as an industry leader in this on all these AI generated, scams, and what we should know as consumers.
They're out to get you. And it's okay. And it's not personal. I mean, part of if somebody takes something from us, we
Mhm.
feel violated. They didn't take it from you. They took it from credit card number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, whatever.
You're just a number.
You're just a number with an account.
Mhm.
So it's nothing. It feels personal.
Mhm.
Indeed, what happened to you was personal.
Mhm.
But to the people behind that, you're just a number. They
Actually, you're a
don't know
couple
if,
numbers, right? You're the
yeah.
account number, your whatever your ID number is, and you're
Oh,
the
yeah.
dollar amount number that they can extract from your information, right? So
Yeah.
you're a number a couple of times over, actually.
Yes. So somebody is sitting in anywhere in the world, literally,
Mhm.
because you can, do transactions, originate them from, someplace in the Africa, Middle East, whatever, Asia,
Mhm.
but it can look like it's across the street.
Right.
A lot
Right.
of proxy
And
services, things like
it
that.
it's coming from, in country too. So you're getting it from the Middle East and the Midwest
Oh,
as
yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Right.
There's somebody in their garage in Iowa. God bless people from Iowa, but there's somebody in the garage from Iowa that's actively trying to steal.
Right. No, that makes total sense. So as you're watching AI coming in, one of the biggest challenges is it really does look to all outsiders paying any attention to this, that cyber criminals are adopting AI tools faster than cybersecurity protections of the companies that are meant to be protecting us and need to be protecting us and the money that we're transacting through them. Can you talk a little bit about what role you see AI playing in helping protect consumers, as you work with all of these big, consumer entities, and just what you're seeing in the industry in general? How is AI starting to be able to catch up with the speed at which cyber criminals are adopting the technology?
So throughout history, the crooks always had the advantage.
Yeah, that's
All
true.
right. They acted first. They don't have rules. They don't have to do that. So, you put money in a safe
Mhm.
and you had a combination. Well, the crooks figured out how to do the combination.
Right.
So they always are ahead of the game. Security is generally a responding force.
Mhm.
And, it sometimes overreacts, hence the false positives.
Right.
So I think you're going to see some of that back and forth.
Mhm.
One of the interesting things like you might see in a lot of screens, are you a robot? And
Yes.
you click that and you go, why? I mean, just how could that fool something? Well, in actuality, the human hand moves not in an AI way. So if it gets populated, virtually by somehow that are you a robot knows it's not a real person.
Right. Right.
So, you there's no AI technology that can mimic a human being
Yeah.
precisely.
Yeah. They haven't figured that one out yet.
So, and partly because
Mhm.
we're very imperfect.
Mhm.
Okay, you would think that this fingerprint was identical to this one. It's not.
No, they're all
Your left
8
eye
billion,
is
8 billion unique fingerprints. That says something.
um your left eye is different than your right eye.
Mhm.
So capturing the variability of the human being in our thoughts, words, physical aspects, and employing that in AI can add the variability to make bad AI
Mhm.
not nearly as effective as it is.
Okay, so that's good. So putting
That's
certain
pretty heavy. I mean, that's a little bit esoteric, perhaps.
no, but that's really good. So we still the humans still have the competitive advantage on we have some home turf advantage in a couple areas.
Because we're imperfect.
Mhm. I love that.
Because we're randomly imperfect, as a matter of fact.
Randomly imperfect. That's
We are.
our saving grace, man.
Yeah, right. Ask my wife. She thinks I'm almost always perfect, but she's not listening.
Oh, that's great. So, the thing about AI too. So one thing I'm hearing you say that might be a good piece of advice is a lot of people get frustrated when they're having to click on those, you know, I show that click that to prove you're a human, or clicking on the, pick the squares with street lights and all of that. That
Yeah.
instead of seeing that as a frustration of slowing you down, sometimes maybe just changing your perspective and realizing, oh, this is good. This is what's protecting me and my money or me and my account, and seeing it as kind of like a personal bodyguard in a sense of your vault and of your life, because that couple of seconds that it takes to fill that in is so much less time than trying to clean up an actual breach. Even if you get your money back from these disputes and everything take so much time and energy that the few seconds you're investing, or even if it's minutes that you're investing to jump through those hoops, ultimately can save you so much, and not least of which is your peace of mind, right?
Yes, but I also think that the consumer friction at times isn't given a much. Um, uh, you can make it very, very hard to commit fraud,
Mm-hmm.
but then you at the expense of consumer friction. And I
Mm.
don't think there has to be it's this or that.
Okay, I like that.
And
It can be a this
so,
and, right?
yeah, so sometimes if a merchant is too complex,
Mm-hmm.
heck with it. I'm going someplace else.
Yep.
I mean, I happen to know what they could do, perhaps, but I'm not going to encourage them to have me jump through 65 hoops when two or three more clever hoops would be better than a 65.
That makes total sense. I like that. So we do need to recognize that there's certain things we're going to be asked to do, but if we feel they're exorbitant or taxing to us, there are alternatives that we can look to. So basically,
Actually, pick up the phone and do a phone order.
there you go. Okay, they'll do it.
Yeah.
Go old school. Go old
Yeah,
school.
very. Yeah. Uh, Not that I would know that.
Right, right. Well, not that we don't always have this thing called a phone tethered to us 24/7.
Yeah.
Um,
But
one
there
thing,
is something else you could do as a consumer that I think is a pretty clever thing to do. I have an email address that I strictly use for shopping.
great advice.
So, an email, like if you sent me an email about this podcast, you got my real email that I look at all the time. But if I'm going shopping, I do three things. One is when I'm just randomly shopping, I'm going incognito.
Great.
So, I'm disguised, so they can't trace back where I am or whatever. Or
Meaning you're hitting an incognito window when you open up
yeah,
the browser, which a lot of
yes.
people listening may not even realize that exists. So as an option,
Yeah,
when
if you have Google, if you look at these three dots,
Mhm.
it go incognito, and you're hidden. Okay. Now the downside is the merchant doesn't know who you are, so it's hard to get things done.
Right. It's basically protecting you from a lot of cookies as well, correct?
Yes, particularly cookies.
Yeah. Which is
Yeah.
good for every place else you go afterwards.
And I have some friends that use incognito to go to um, non-G rated sites.
Uh-huh. They're good for all kinds of things.
Yeah. So they tell me. But anyway, the other thing is I have this alternative email address.
Mhm.
So, you've gone to merchants and you bought something and it was a really good deal. Then you look at your inbox, you got 150 different promotions and all that kind of stuff. And if that merchant gets hacked, but that email is not connected to any of my financial stuff.
Correct.
It's just for shopping.
Right. And that's so important because a lot of people mistakenly, they'll have the email that they use for email correspondence. They use it
Yeah,
also for all their financial logins and retirement and
yeah.
social security logins. And they use it to sign up at a store to get the 10% off for the online shopping. And then and to your point, it's not just that it could be hacked, it's also that legitimate legal data brokers are selling their information to,
Oh God, yeah.
right? So that's why you're going to have this huge spam in your email, and a lot of people aren't aware of that, I don't think.
So if I would almost recommend three
Hmm.
email addresses.
Perfect. Which are, just repeat them for everybody.
One strictly for banking and finance,
Great.
nothing else.
Mhm.
Your mom, your sister, your brother, your spouse, they don't even know that. That's just your
I
bank.
don't even know it exists. Okay.
Yes. And you look at that and it's going to be uncluttered. There's not going to be much.
Mhm.
Then friends and family. Hi, how you doing? When you going golfing? We having dinner tomorrow? That kind of email. Then
Right.
the third one is for buying
Right.
stuff.
Just all the clutter and all the let them
Yep.
spam you and everything like that.
Yep. And it's funny because I bought a refrigerator once. All right, not a big thing. I bought a refrigerator, but for the next month, I got ads for buying refrigerators. Like, how many refrigerators do you think I could use?
I know, it's so funny. As somebody who's worked in marketing, I'm like, that ship already sailed. You should sell them something to put in their refrigerator.
Perfect. Sandy, yeah, you got 100%. Yeah.
Right, right. No, it is funny, and I think people are frustrated by that. Consumers are incredibly frustrated by that.
Yeah. If you ever doubt the capability, look for some esoteric project that you're never gonna buy. A
Mhm,
private jet,
mhm,
a a boat, a yacht, or whatever. You'd be amazed how quickly you
mhm.
will see ads popping up on your favorite websites.
Oh, I've gotten them within minutes. I've got
Yeah.
True. No, that's so great. That's such great advice. In fact, that's one of the foundational essentials that we teach in our workshops is, to have set up this new uh set up a new email just for your financial accounts and then set new passwords for it and put them in a password manager. It's kind of like, so don't do it with your old password that's already been hacked and is probably on have you been pawned, with 12 breaches already on it. So that's really good advice. We have a lot of people listening who write in and they ask, hey, this is great. You're really helping me. And I'm also trying to teach my kids and my teenagers and people, the young people in my house going off to college. And whether you're a parent or just have children around you somewhere in your life, what advice what additional advice besides what you just gave would you give to someone wanting to teach, teenagers and young adults and kids about online financial safety? What other advice would you give them?
You know, we like to think they're secrets, but they're no secrets.
Mm,
And when I would in business, I would, people would write emails,
mhm.
and I said, any email, he said, well, I put private and confidential on it or whatever.
Right.
Oh, that works. Nothing bad happens when you do that. But still the safest way to do financial transactions is face to face.
Mhm.
So, you want your son or daughter open an account, take them to a bank,
Mhm.
meet that person so they have somebody to call.
Mhm.
They realize there's people involved.
Right.
When you're in a virtual world, you don't even know what's real or not.
Right. And it's enough that money isn't real anyway, because it's
Yeah.
all digital. But I think that's really good advice, because for those of us who grew up with a brick and mortar and online and converting to online, it's we have a different foundation than people who are just growing up online. And I think that's really good advice to kind of teach them the basic 101s of financial institutions and how they work, and the fact that all of that money
It
is
doesn't hurt to be
back.
tethered to a real person.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's great.
So not overly tight, but yeah.
That's good. Great. And is there anything else that you offer?
Yeah, buy my new book. It's coming out next week.
Well, I was going to have you
I'm
plug it at
just,
the end, but go ahead and plug now. Yeah, please
oh,
talk.
it's called Quietly Spectacular.
Wonderful.
It's about rethinking what success is.
Oh, I love that.
Oftentimes the world tells us what success is, how many
Mm,
followers you have, how big your bank account is, what your title is, how many stock options. But this opens up the door for individuals to define success.
wow. And
And
that
it,
is so important, especially like we were saying, for people in, teenagers and people going off to college and things like that, to really think about defining that, either you define it or others are going to define it for you.
and don't let anyone else define it.
That is so great. Oh, I'm
You
so glad you wrote that book. That's great.
there's two there's the people that are already quietly spectacular but might not really know it.
Mm,
And it, I hope, gives them some comfort that, yeah, I did what I wanted to do, and I'm quite successful at what I want to do.
that's great.
And I guess those trappings were a distraction.
Hmm.
And I'm happy with my life knowing that it was my choice and
Hmm.
this is what I want to do. And then to the other, like, okay, I don't feel fulfilled.
Hmm.
I'm working hard. Um, I've got a title, I've got corner office, I have stock options, but I just don't quite feel fulfilled.
Hmm.
I always wanted to be a butcher, baker, candlestick maker, and I want to do that rather than this. So
Hmm.
it's a bit about individuals finding themselves, their authentic self,
That's wonderful.
and appreciating that because that's beautiful.
I'm so glad. And that's so great coming from you, because you've checked all the boxes on success as defined by society, including all the patents and the having building a company that was acquired by Visa, by a major name, and making good in the world, and doing good in the world. And so for you to write the book on reflecting on this, I think is very powerful. So that is awesome. We'll come back to the website at the end to make sure people know where to go to buy it. But I'm so glad you wrote that. And I can't recommend anything by Mike more, because because of everything I just said, and he's a wonderful human being. So, and he's living his best life. So you always want to take advice from the people that you want to emulate. And I would certainly, recommend to people that emulating Mike's life would be spectacular. So that's great.
Have them emulate themselves, be themselves,
Yeah,
be the authentic you.
yeah.
Whatever that
Emulate
is.
emulate your authenticness is kind of where I'm going.
Perfect. I love that. Yes.
Now, along with that, it's so interesting, kind of tying these things together. Um, because you and I have both worked in cybersecurity, and being in cybersecurity, you kind of lock things down. Most of the people I know in cybersecurity, if they have a Facebook or social media account at all, it's isolated, it's sitting out there, and it's almost a honeypot, meaning it's it's a trap place. They're not really using it the way the average person uses it. And then when people like you and I are getting information out there to help other people. It's a 180 really. So we're going from being like hidden and secluded and isolated online to actually suddenly being very visible. I do know you limit your social media profile, as so many of us do, but you're also promoting your book and you're going on all these podcasts and
Yeah,
radio.
I'm going to have to become a little more public.
Yeah, it is. But this is great because for you doing it and doing it safely, you've got some tips to advise to help people understand what do you practice that they could learn from. So what advice do you have for people who need to be on social media for work and life and want to stay safe? What are a couple tips you would give them?
So, you take inventory, almost have an expiration date, like every 30 days, flush everybody out and put it back in. I know that's a little bit too complex, but it's surprising how many people don't look at who's following them.
Mm,
All
hmm
right. I had 30 people making up numbers. I had 30 people following me on Wednesday.
hmm
On Friday, I have 130. Why?
hmm Right.
Okay.
Especially if there's a lot of bots in there and things like that.
Yes.
Mhm.
So, um, you know, it's in the real world, we're protective of who we meet. Hello, um,
We don't invite strangers into our homes. Most of us don't.
yes. We go to a strange place. We're a little bit, guarded. We're not overly, person who walks up to you on the street and is overly friendly. You know,
Mhm.
and so that virtual world is worse. Be more suspicious.
Yeah, and we don't have the same spidey senses. Like the reason we have such great spidey senses in real life is because we're the descendants of the survivors of the threats.
Yes.
But we have not been programmed. We have not we do our limbic system has not been programmed to recognize a threat online. And so that same alarm doesn't go off when a stranger is trying to come into your online home. You may not even realize it. Right. So I get this a lot. I'm glad you brought this up because it's not even just the follows. A lot of people are accepting connections of complete
Yeah.
strangers. And it's one thing to have people following you. That's fine. But to connect with them, to make them a Facebook friend or a connection on LinkedIn when you've never met them and you don't even know who they are. And that photo may not even really be them. It could be somebody else's photo. So I think
That's never happened. So
that's
think
never
about,
happened in the last 2 seconds. There you
yeah,
go.
yeah. So think about your walking any main street anywhere in the world,
hmm
and there's an alley that's poorly lit.
hmm
Okay. Who walks down that alley?
hmm
Right? Why did you walk down that alley that's poorly lit and in the middle of the night?
hmm
So we know not to do that in the real world.
Right.
But think about how many alleys we walk down in a virtual sense and
Yeah.
offer too good to be true.
Yep.
Buy one, get one, someone free. Your system is a security risk. Click here.
Right. Right.
Those are blind alleys, poorly
Yes.
lit alleys.
In a bad part of town in the dark.
You just took the words right out of my mouth. Yes. Yeah. Well, I think almost any major city, a dark alley at night is probably not advisable.
Right. No, that's great advice. That's really true. So start seeing the online world that way, the same way
Mhm.
that you would see the real world. I love that.
Yeah, that's a dark alley.
hmm hmm
I'm not going to walk there by myself. I'm
Right.
going to, or
That's
not walk there at all.
even better. Even better.
Yeah.
No, that's great. With all these changes coming and the phishing and the spam and the AI generated deep fakes and everything else that are happening, this has got to be an amazing time for somebody with your brain and background, looking at it. If you have a crystal ball and you were looking 5 to 10 years ahead, what do you think the smart consumer safety toolkit will look like? I mean, a lot of these foundations are still going to be the same, but are there any changes that you would predict to how we as consumers will need to be looking at the online world and safety to stay safe and be smart?
Well, like I said before, the crooks aren't going to quit.
Yeah.
So, they have something here, we counteract it. So there's still going to be crooks. I think a more sensitive and dynamic authentication technology
Mhm.
will help quite a bit. You know, the idea that, you know, and I'm going to really reach out there, the idea that I walk in a store
Mhm.
and I just pick things up and walk out of the store without even going in my wallet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some people who've been into the Amazon stores already, are seeing that
So,
you just
you
walk in.
know, that kind of, and I know people walk into stores and take things without paying. All right. I mean, that's on the news. No, I'm talking about legitimate commerce.
Mhm.
So, you know, I see some of that where I go, you know, I sit down and I don't see a check anymore.
Mhm. Mhm.
All right. You know, and it happens, you know, if you belong to a private club, that's the way it happens.
Mhm.
Now they're authenticating you by sight
Mhm.
and by habit. So why can't that be emulated in the brick and mortar world broadly, more broadly? And then why not virtually?
Yeah.
We used to have an expression at Cardinal in the early days, going into the internet as an encrypted, encoded fistful of dollars.
Mm.
Okay.
Mhm.
So, you know, here's the money, here's, you know, and so more sensitive authentication will go a long way and make it harder for the crooks.
That's great. That's great. And so, and as we get used to it, we also realize that we'll be able to protect ourselves from that, by going into, I guess everything about who you do business with is important. So going into a reputable store where they're getting, they're collecting this information about you, but it's no different than what they're doing online when you're purchasing anyway.
Yeah.
It's just that you're walking into the store and you're walking out with it, and then your purchases will be attached to your identity in their system. But going with reputable companies so that your information is protected to the best degree possible and things like that.
Actually, that's really smart. That's really smart because, you know, how many people will see a online retailer
Mhm.
and click on it, whereas maybe what they could do is do a search and find out what it is and whether that merchant is credible or not.
That's a good point, especially if you've never heard of them before. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's happening a lot. I've seen so many people, men and women, they see something, to your point about when you search for something and then it shows up. One of the trends that we're seeing at Smarter Online Safety is, okay, this woman was searching for a handbag, and then all of a sudden she got this pop-up ad. It was not, it was an ad on the side that was the bag she wanted for a ridiculously low price, and she was like, "Oh my gosh."
I got it.
And she clicked on it, and and the rest went exactly where you'd fear it would go, which is she paid for the bag, but it never came, and then she had all these charges coming in, and they stole her credit card, and it was a false company. But because they were able, from the cookies of where she was looking, know what she was looking for, and they put a beautiful ad up of exactly what she wanted at a price she couldn't resist, but she didn't stop to verify who she was buying it from. And that's where, when we're drooling over something that we want, we forget to stop and do the double check to make sure that what we're, where we're going and who we're going to be doing business with is legitimate. So that's
Yeah. Search engines are wonderful tools.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
So use them.
Yes, exactly. That's so great. Oh my gosh, we've gotten such great information today. Mike, thank you so much. We've gotten, have the 3 different emails for the 3 different things.
Yeah.
That's huge. For young people, make sure that you're not just having them think of money as this this digital thing that they do anywhere. Show them what an actual physical bank is and setting up their account, and instilling the real value of money is great, so that they can really appreciate what's going on with their finances, and knowing that this is their money and there are people protecting it, and knowing what their account is all about, and then being very careful of what you're clicking on, and treating the entire internet as full of dark alleys, so you don't walk down a dark alley by yourself in a bad part of town late at night online, because people are doing that every day and not realizing it. So start paying attention to where you're going the same way you would in a strange, if you were traveling abroad, and you're going to be 100% safer. That is so awesome. Thank you so much. So one more time on your book, and where can people go to get this? The title of your book? And where to
It'll
get
be
it?
on Amazon next week, I think.
Perfect.
I'm not sure the exact release date because there's always a lag. But I would say after Labor Day, there would be available.
Perfect. And the name of the book again?
Quietly Spectacular.
I love that. And Mike, thank you for being quietly spectacular and vocally spectacular on our Smarter Online Safety podcast today, and for sharing the wealth of knowledge with everybody about how they can protect themselves and everything and everyone they care about. So appreciate having you on as a guest today. Thank you so much.
Jocelyn, it was my pleasure. Like I said before, it's so nice to have a real professional talk to. Thank you.
All right. So everybody, thank you so much for joining us. This concludes this episode. And until next time, stay safe out there.